Hola, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a Vidas. Nuestro invitado es un hombre que a los 20 años se estrenó como guionista profesional y en 1968 saltó a la fama como coautor de Érase una vez en el Oeste. Su nombre, Dario Argento. Él nació en el seno de una familia artística. Su madre era fotógrafa brasileña y su padre era productor italiano. Así que en su memoria hay momentos como cuando se sentaba en las rodillas de Sofía Loren. Pero hoy en día las cosas han cambiado. Su nombre es uno de los más importantes en el cine del horror, donde se ha desempeñado como compositor, actor, guionista y también director. Entre los invitados a este programa estarán el músico Alice Cooper y el director de Halloween, John Carpenter.
Dario Argento.
The films of Dario Argento are the most baroque, most stylish, most inventively violent, most dreamlike, most nightmarish, and most haunting films that the Italian horror cinema has ever produced.
Dario came along with a completely fresh view at the latter end of the 60s when one was really needed. He changed the face of horror fantasy.
Any filmmaker working in this genre will acknowledge an influence from Dario Argento.
I think that Dario can influence people and has influenced directors with his absolute courage at what he can do on the screen. No one can imitate that style.
Dario was probably more scared of the films that he made than his audience was. I've seen the guy just shaking and watching his own film.
For me, he's the only director in Italy that I admire, for real, the only brave one.
No politics, no moralism, no anything. It's art. You just have to watch it and feel it.
He's an impressionist. And it's fabulous. His stuff is just fabulous to watch.
Dario Argento nació en Roma en 1940. Su madre era fotógrafa y su padre producía películas. Por eso desde un principio Dario estaba inmerso en el mundo del arte.
Io ho passato parte della mia vita nello studio di mia mamma mentre lei fotografava tutte le famose dive dell'epoca. Per questo mi ha creato una strana sensazione, per cui io ho una familiarità col volto delle donne.
Dario también recuerda la influencia de su padre.
Chiaramente fin da bambino a casa si parlava di cinema, il cinema era l'argomento di conversazione continua. Mio papà ogni tanto tornava negli anni 50, ricordo, e diceva era tutto triste, a tavola, tutti i bambini, tutti preoccupati. Dice perché? Purtroppo ragazzi, vi devo annunciare una cosa, che è cominciata la crisi del cinema italiano.
Como muchos artistas famosos de lo macabro, el joven Dario tuvo periodos de enfermedad, durante los cuales sus únicos compañeros eran su imaginación y sus sueños.
Questo aspetto oscuro della mia esistenza c'era, perché ero un ragazzo anche molto solitario, che avevo pochissimi rapporti, leggevo sempre, ero molto solitario. le opere di Shakespeare, ho letto un libro che mi impressiona moltissimo, era Le mille e una notte, in edizione originale, che era anche pieno di sesso, che fu una meravigliosa. E poi tra questi libri un giorno mi capitò
Darío absorbió el universo oscuro de Edgar Allan Poe con mucho entusiasmo. Había encontrado una de las influencias más poderosas que tendría en su carrera. Las visiones afiebradas y alucinantes de Poe no estaban tan alejadas de las cualidades de ensueño de la pantalla.
Il cinema per me era una cosa grande, era proprio andare in questo, era la dimensione del sogno che io in quel momento avevo scoperto, che era bellissima. E quando andavo al cinema io rivivevo questa dimensione del sogno ed ero una specie di drogato del cinema, completamente addict a questa droga.
La pasión de Darío por el cine lo condujo a su primer trabajo como crítico. Fue durante este periodo que evolucionó su proprio estilo cinematográfico.
I miei film sono visivi anche perché io come critico amavo un cinema di visualità, un cinema che rappresentasse le immagini. Infatti c'è stato un incontro, quando ho incontrato Sergio Leone, è stata forse la prima volta nella mia vita che io ho visto una persona che ragionava in termini di immagini. E mi è sembrato una cosa fantastica, una cosa nuova, bellissima.
Fue Sergio Leone quien le dio a Darío su primera oportunidad de trabajar en una película.
Lui, appunto, così, era un giovanissimo, un critico. Lui credette in me e mi fece scrivere insieme a Bernardo Bertolucci un film che era...
I became aware of Dario's name when I saw Once Upon a Time in the West, and this great Western that I fell in love with. And I thought it was wonderful when it came out. It was a real big, giant opera. And it had some pretty impressive credits on it. Bertolucci and Dario Argento and Sergio Leone. And I said, who is this Argento character?
Después de trabajar con Leone, Darío comenzó a escribir un guión propio. Su ambición en ese momento era solamente escribir.
Mi vende l'idea, però potrei farlo meglio io, che se non altro conosco il cinema in modo abbastanza profondo, certo più di questi registi che mi hanno proposto. E così chiesi di farlo io. Fu difficilissimo, fu molto difficile. Mio papà mi aiutò molto, mio padre Salvatore mi aiutò molto. E insieme però perdemmo più di un anno e mezzo a trovare un finanziatore.
El pájaro de la pluma de cristal, el primer thriller de Darío, también fue su primer éxito comercial.
Quando finì il film io parlai con dei miei colleghi e dissi penso il film ha avuto molto successo, penso che sarò costretto a fare almeno qualche altro film così, film giallo. E tutti mi dissero ma certo, ma sei pazzo se non lo fai, cioè saresti un pazzo. E io ho detto è vero, sarei un pazzo se non lo facessi. E così ho fatto altri film gialli.
El término giallo deriva de una serie de libros de thrillers muy populares en esa época. Mario Bava los había introducido en sus películas, pero Darío agregó un estilo operístico y gráfico propio. El enfoque distintivo de Argento fue muy evidente en sus siguientes películas. El gato de 9 colas, con Carl Malden y Jane Francisco. Y 4 moscas sobre terciopelo gris, protagonizada por Michael Brandon.
It was fascinating, very different. It had a style about it that was really compelling. And so I call my agent, I say, this guy knocks on my door. I don't know how he found where I live. You know, this was up in the hills, this place. And anyway, he says, what's that? I said, Dario Argento. He said, kidding? Dario Argento is the most popular director in Italy. I said, seriously? He said, more money than Fellini, this guy's movies. He's unbelievable.
Pero tenía que superar un pequeño problema.
So the next thing is I'm flying to Rome. And all of a sudden Dario comes in and he looks at me and he goes, oh, no. And there's a whole conversation going on. I go, what's going on? What's wrong? Finally, there was a girl named Patricia, and she was the translator of the script. And she said, your eyes, is something wrong with my eyes? What's wrong with my eyes? He said, the wrong color. Wrong color? What do you mean? My eyes are the wrong color. It's all a matter of lighting. They go from brown to yellow to hazel. They change colors. So all of a sudden, Dario's got a light, and he takes the light, and he's going, okay. Now we're all settled. Everything's okay now. We'll stay.
Argento es un maestro de la imaginación. Sus imágenes parecen cuadros pintados en una pantalla y sus efectos sonoros son excepcionales. Después de la pausa, vamos a ver que el horror no es la única pasión de este director. Ya venimos. Estamos conociendo a Dario Argento, un maestro del terror.
Aun cuando Darío se convirtió en un exitoso director, su padre siguió produciendo sus películas. Los vínculos familiares en Italia son muy fuertes.
My father had experience. He made a lot of movies before Dario. So they love each other, of course. And when I joined them in 1973, it was like making together an old family, you know? The three of us together. It was very nice. And nothing is better than that.
Su primera colaboración en un trabajo familiar fue un drama histórico, Los 5 días de Milán. No tenía el estilo que los admiradores esperaban y no tuvo éxito comercial. Luego de Rojo Profundo, hizo Los 5 días de Milán y marcó el regreso al estilo anterior de las películas de Argento. También fue la primera de varias colaboraciones de la actriz Daria Nicolodi.
Good evening. Hi, everybody.
Okay, who told you? We met at the airport. I was going to South America, he was going to Africa. And he was unhappy with this woman, I was unhappy with this man. Our eyes, you know, mixed.
As it happens, the victim was rather famous around here.
But then we met again for the casting of Profondo Rosso of Deep Red.
Get Mingozzi in here.
No, il film venne, pensavo che quando lo feci, pensavo che stavo facendo un film interessante. Sperimentai molto i movimenti di macchina, certe nuove sensazioni, nuove emozioni. Tra l'altro ci ho conosciuto la donna Daria Nicolodi, è stato il nostro primo film, è diventata la mia donna e ho passato anche tanti anni molto belli, importanti.
Fue una relación volátil y durante su tiempo juntos, Dario y Daria tuvieron una hija, Asia. La hija mayor de Daria, Fiore, de un matrimonio anterior, los recuerda juntos.
I was the eldest, so I picked up more of that period compared to Asia. I've never seen in my life a couple loving so much one another. They really fell in love in a deep, complete way. And they were like one person.
Oh, no. I've got to get in on this side. The lock's broken on the other door. Sorry.
She was the muse, also poets and artists all over, because she just makes you think about things.
Oh, I should have warned you about that, see?
I think it was a very good relationship when it was good with them. Even if it was, I don't know, they were fighting a lot, but it was creative, and sometimes you need this pain and this nightmares to be alive.
There's no question in my mind that Dario Nicolodi put Dario on a completely new track. I mean, if it had not been for her and their relationship at that particular time, we would not get Suspiria.
Suspiria was just a whole other thing. Instead of being a murder mystery, it's a supernatural story. It's a fairy tale, really, a haunted kind of fairy tale.
Suspiria fue la primera película de una trilogía aún no terminada sobre un pacto de figuras malvadas conocidas como las Tres Madres.
Suspiria is one of the all-time great horror movies ever made. It's terrifying. It's like a bad dream. It's like a nightmare. It's like being trapped in a nightmare. The part of the movie that gets me so much is the very beginning, which opens so strangely and simply, but all of a sudden, I'm in this airport walking with this girl out into this rainstorm. She's trying to catch a taxi. And you see these fountains of water cascading, and all of a sudden I'm very disturbed by what I'm looking at. I don't know why. And that movie is an incredible work of art.
Working with Dario and making this extraordinary movie with all its color and its vitality and its groundbreaking artistry. I knew that what he was doing was beautiful and very interesting, but I didn't know how groundbreaking it is. When you spend 11 hours with maggots in your hair, you get sort of inured to the horror of it. So when I saw it, I didn't have the shocked response to it that an ordinary audience member would, of course, because I had lived it.
I put Suspiria in my top 3 best horror movies of all time. I think Suspiria has got an attitude and a feel and a sound to it that is a true nightmare. It's a real nightmare.
Suspiria fue la segunda película de Argento que llevó la banda de sonido compuesta y grabada por el grupo italiano de rock Goblin.
It's stunning. Just that simple little melody line over and over again could create that much tension. What impressed me was the quality of the soundtrack from Suspiria was its absolute simplicity, but its effectiveness. In other words, had it been more complicated, had it been the John Williams Mickey Mouse kind of score that you hear all the time today, that movie wouldn't have been half as scary.
The scores that Goblin did for him for Suspiria have got to be among the most amazing scores ever done for a horror movie. They are rooted in progressive rock, basically, but they are bizarre. They incorporate not only musical instruments, but also whines and screams and hisses and whispers, and they are so creepy.
Got a little Stockhausen background to it a little bit, and it's got a little bit of rock involved, but if you were going to ask me how to classify it, I wouldn't be able to classify what it was, really, what kind of music it was, but except that it sounds European. But when you put it in the scene where the blind guy with his dog is walking through the plaza, and the music's getting louder and louder and louder, and the dog turns and rips his throat out for no apparent reason, that music becomes very effective.
Much of the music for Suspiria was composed before the film was shot, and that in order to get everybody into the right terrorized mood for the scenes that he was going to shoot, Argento would put this music on and then crank it up to 11, and everybody would be shaking in their boots. And it's no wonder that they all look like they're on the verge of a nervous breakdown throughout that film.
La música también sobresalió en la fantasía gótica de Argento, Inferno. Esta vez la compuso la leyenda del rock, Keith Emerson.
Dario gave me free license to do whatever I wanted with the music, and I think in hindsight, when I look back at it, what the music I wrote was a juxtaposition to what was really occurring on the screen. When I was composing it, my sons were like aged between 11, I suppose, and 7 years old, and I had to keep them out of my music room because they wanted to see what Daddy was writing. And every time they came in the music room, I just said, no, you can't watch this. You'll have nightmares. Dario would say, you've got to use this piece of Verdi. I said, well, if I'm going to do a version of this Verdi piece, I'm going to do it my way. So I actually did it in 5/4. And if you've ever been in an Italian taxi and been bumped around, 5/4 is a very suitable time signature.
Así como llegó a los límites de la música para películas, Argento también llegó a los límites de la violencia en las películas.
About violence in the Italian cinema, I think you have to talk about violence in Italian art generally, and violence particularly in opera, which is the Italian national art. If you print a plot synopsis, even of Rigoletto, it's grisly, it's grim, it's horrifying. You might have some trouble getting that movie past the MPAA. It does seem to be part of the way Italian artists often express themselves. There's a great extravagance in what they do that extends to extravagant operatic violence. And operatic is a word that people often use when they talk about Argento's films. The fact that he made a film called Opera, I think, is in no way coincidental.
Opera has one of the most strongest central ideas of a girl having needles put under her eyes so she can't close them, so she has to look at scenes of abject horror. This was always his metaphor for his cinema anyway. And it's like Dario saying, I actually direct these scenes of violence for you to watch them. I do not want you to look away. I have a point to say.
What made Dario stand apart is that he really is a skilled craftsman, that he's able to create a film that is so suspenseful and so scary, and that this becomes sort of the icing on the cake, so to speak, is when you get to the, you know, to that violent punctuation.
Una crítica frecuente del trabajo de Argento es que la violencia en sus películas está casi siempre dirigida hacia las mujeres.
I heard him saying that women are much more fun to kill, women are much more curious, women are much more interesting, and in a more profound way, there's something with his mother too that's not very clear to me, and I don't know what my grandmother did to him, but he always saw her as a monster, and so he tries to exercise that through his films.
Io non sono un misogino, non immagino i film o di una storia dove ci sono delle donne che vengono torturate e gli uomini le torturano, no. Nei miei film ci sono degli uomini che vengono torturati e fatti a pezzi e...
All of the leading actors, the heroes in his movies are women. So it's difficult to pin him with the misogynistic label, per se. I think that he does something that is extremely disturbing to audiences, and that he couples violent death with almost sexual beauty.
Las películas de Argento parecen surgir de un lugar muy profundo, un mundo fantástico del subconsciente y de los sueños, donde la narrativa lógica toma un segundo lugar respecto de la verdad emocional.
Dario told me he has dreams or nightmares, and that's how the story comes into being. he would write down the nightmare, and it would become the script.
I think that in Argento's films, the narrative usually doesn't matter a whole lot. They create this kind of dreamlike space that really, it's like being plunged into an incredibly complicated, fascinating nightmare. And it's somebody else's nightmare.
Knowing Dario as I do, I think that his films come out of his mind. The ideas behind his images and the way he looks at things comes out of the story that he tells over and over again. There was a hallway at the back of his house, and when he had to go to sleep at night, for whatever reason, when he would walk there, he would imagine these things behind this doorways of this hallway. And by the time he got to his room, he was in complete terror.
I think when Dario gets an idea, he is basically trying to communicate a kind of, either a kind of horror or an allegory about certain human behavior. I don't think he's the kind of guy that dots the I's and crosses the T's as far as story or a character arc. I don't think he particularly cares about that. He's more like Gauguin or Van Gogh, somebody who just says, well, here's the way I want this to be, and this is the world, and, you know, take from it what you will.
Las manos asesinas que aparecen en las películas de Argento, por lo general, son las de él mismo. La más reciente película de este director apareció en el 2000 y se llama I Can't Sleep. Vamos a hacer una pausa. Al regreso veremos el trabajo que Argento ha realizado para otros directores. Este maestro del terror, vidas en People and Años.
Dario Argento escribió y produjo películas también para otros directores. Ayudó a George Romero, el creador de La Noche de los Muertos Vivos, para que financiara y produjera la segunda parte, Amanecer de los Muertos.
L'ho incontrato a New York e poi dopo appunto lui venne in Italia, è stato in un albergo bellissimo vicino al Colosseo e così ha scritto il film e poi dopo io sono stato con lui mentre lo girava un po' di tempo. È stato un bellissimo rapporto.
I wound up sitting in Rome for a month and writing the final script, the shooting script there, which is an experience, you know, because it was all just pasta and caprese salads and going out with Dario at night and big tables, 20 people, all multilingual people, and I'm sitting there like this guy from Pittsburgh with this idea about people, dead people that walk.
El éxito comercial de Amanecer de los Muertos unió otra vez a Argento y Romero. Su siguiente proyecto fue sobre dos cuentos de Edgar Allan Poe. Dario y George la dirigieron juntos.
I hadn't heard from Dario for a number of years, and all of a sudden he called me and said, George, I am Dario. And wow, so we had a great chat, and he said he wanted to do a thing with Poe stories. He would do one, and I would do one, was his plan, and they would be an hour each or 40, 50 minutes each. And we just had a ball, like a bunch of kids playing with electric trains, you know. I think it's a fun little film. I think that's where he met Tom Savini for the first time, or worked with him for the first time.
Dario Argento? Dario is a star in his own right. God, Suspiria, Tenebrae, you know. He's a volcano of the mind. We would sit there and, you know, create this stuff, you know, and just thousands of ideas, and he was like picking the best one. And, you know, he doesn't speak very much English, but we could talk for hours with sign language and, you know, charade gestures and things like that. He's just fun.
Tom Savini siempre estuvo fascinado por la mecánica de la muerte. El tiempo que pasó en el ejército le enseñó cosas valiosas para su carrera.
The jaw is always slack, maybe one eye is slightly open and closed. Sometimes they die with smiles on their faces, you know.
Precious.
En Trauma, una película de Argento que también dirigió en los Estados Unidos, le tocó a la actriz Piper Laurie recibir el tratamiento de Savini.
You know, the most difficult part of that is what I had to do before I even left Los Angeles and go to one of those special effects places where they put plaster over you. And I'd done it once a few years before and thought I was going to die because of claustrophobia. They do stick straws in your nose, but still it was very difficult for me. The actual shooting of the beheading and all the frolicking afterwards was fascinating. I'd never done anything like that.
Dario wanted the head to roll across the floor and say, Nicholas, every time its mouth rolled toward the camera.
I was seated on a revolving stool, and somebody would spin me around on it, and I'd go whirling around so that they get a shot of the head spinning. Of course, it was very close, so you couldn't see that what was really going on.
We took the floor and put it behind her on wheels. So they would wheel the floor behind her as she spun on the chair, and they turned the camera upside down, featuring just below the appliance on the neck, and she would go, Nicholas, Nicholas.
I mean, it's not often that you get beheaded and then get lines to say afterwards.
La imaginación e ingenuidad técnica de Argento no se limitan a matar a sus personajes.
The shot that blew me away was the shot in Opera, which tracks the bird around the opera house. I still don't know how they did it. He tried to explain to me, but I didn't quite understand. I guess some sort of a crane from the ceiling or something, but what an amazing shot that was. I've never seen a shot like that.
A pesar de la variedad en sus obras, Argento siempre volvía a la mecánica de la muerte.
Harvey Keitel, in a fantasy dream sequence in this medieval flashback, is impaled and the steak comes out of his mouth.
Aquí en la ciudad industrial de Turín comienza el caos organizado de la filmación. Dario Argento, maestro del terror, está ocupado trabajando en su película número 15. Para un soñador solitario como Darío, convertir esos sueños en realidad es una experiencia penosa.
No, voi no, fermeli! Il momento che io odio di più di un film è quando si gira, lo shooting. Il momento per me più fastidioso, più imbarazzante. Lo faccio che nessuno si accorge che per me è così brutto questo momento.
Pronto? 3, 2, 1, azione!
Perché girare mi trovo male? Mi trovo male perché io sono una persona sempre abituata a essere solo, solitario, con la pagina, quindi mi trovo invece quando faccio il film con un folle di persone intorno che mi parlano, che mi chiedono, tutti fatti pratici, no? Che a me mi irritano queste cose, però non lo do a vedere e anzi faccio vedere che sono entusiasta di questa atmosfera che invece non mi piace per niente a me, il momento di girare il film.
Dovete economizzare un pochino la camminata.
Dicen que Argento a veces muestra más interés en la apariencia de la película que en la actuación.
Molto spesso l'attore pensa, è molto egoista, pensa a se stesso e non pensa che all'interno del film la sua performance deve essere amalgamata a tutto il resto, ai colori, perché i miei film sono film compositi dove non è l'interpretazione dell'attore che pensavano solamente a se stessi. Questo qui purtroppo è stato abbastanza dura da superare.
Lately, my father has changed very much with actors. I think it was a thing with my mother that made him hate actors. Probably worked with some people who were not very nice, and I don't know. So he was, when I was little, he was always telling me, actors are shit, actors are animals, like Hitchcock said, actors are beasts. And I thought to myself, and I was a little girl and I was already acting, and I told him once, but I am an actress. He said, no, you're not.
Usually Dario just wants to use them and like move them around the screen. He wants them to act, that's what he's paid them to do. Get on with it. He just wants to sort of move his camera around them, do these fabulous shots, you know, go over them, go under them, go round them. That's what he wants to do. He's more interested in that.
Okay. He cares less about performance than about just the, you know, the position in the frame, and as long as it's appropriate, the expression is appropriately dramatic, whatever. I think that he would, you know, I think that he would probably have a good time working with computer-generated actors.
It's surprising to hear that Dario doesn't like actors, because I had such a sharing, working experience with him. He was like a child in his excitement. He just, fantastic, fantastic. I mean, guy weighed 88 pounds. You know, he was thin, but he would just throw his body into the air. You know, he just loved it all.
He was the kind of director who knows what an actor has to offer and uses the actor's particular gifts and just gently guides him or her, rather than trying to impose his idea of how a performance precisely should be. So he I mean, in other words, I think he brought out the best in me, which is always, I think, what a good director can do with an actor.
Attenzione, un'altra prova, meccanica, via dal campo.
I think my father hates actors that are there like, oh, come on, you have to speak to me, I want attention, I want more. My father sometimes shows the actors, most of the time, what he wants through the movements of his camera. And you have to be smart enough to appreciate that and give your best and direct yourself, you know, just be and not act.
Dario Argento ha trabajado en varias películas de su padre.
Through Asia, Dario is actually reliving his relationship with Dario in many ways. They look alike. I think Asia is as good an actress as her mother is, and I think through that they're actually exploring everything that I think Dario would have wanted to have done with Dario had their relationship lasted the course.
Periodo in cui ho lavorato con mia figlia Asia, ho scoperto la mia nuova musa in lei. Ha lavorato con me quando aveva appena 13 anni e poi quando aveva un privilegio poter lavorare con la propria figlia che fa l'attrice, senza che questo porti a delle rivalità o il solito antagonismo padre-figlio che nasce.
He needs somebody, a feminine character, to represent his curiosity of life and danger and all these things. In some ways, sometimes I thought that he gave me life only to have a muse, only to have somebody, an actress for his films. And sometimes I think that.
Algunos creen que Darío habría tenido más éxito si hubiera tomado otro camino y se hubiera mudado a los Estados Unidos.
Veramente bella, ne facciamo un'altra. Va bene.
Dario is Italian. Dario is, you know, is completely Italian, and maybe he was even proud to be Italian, you know.
Vieni più vicino a noi la macchina.
For an artist,
movies, it's better to stay in your country and make your movie from your country.
Ancora, ancora. Oh, basta.
And then present your talent to everybody else. Why make movies from other countries and make the same things? It doesn't have any sense.
I think that his American movie look too much American. I like his Italian movies because they have a different style, a different flavor, which his American movie do not have. So I think his right place is Italy. You know, he makes Italy international. He makes Italy American too, because he has a very personal, very special way to look at it, to film it.
We wait there.
I think he's probably been given a certain freedom to follow his own vision that many American directors certainly don't have, because they're answering to bottom line executives who have a crowd of accountants sitting behind them saying, I think it's very nice this director has an artistic vision, but if we don't have a body every 15 minutes, nobody's going to care about this movie.
En una carrera que ha abarcado casi 40 años, Argento se ha vuelto famoso por su estilo visual único.
His use of camera and his fluidity of his shots, I think, have been very influential to many filmmakers. Even in some of his lesser films, I think some of the people will say that, look, you know, you're looking at a guy who really knows how to move the camera, knows how to create, you know, some creative shots and creative angles and things like that.
He would look at something and he'd think about it. And then he'd all of a sudden go, macchina mano, and they'd bring him the hand camera. Così, così, così.
Così.
And he'd go and he'd run, he'd jump up on top of a sofa.
La macchina così fa questo movimento. Così.
And he'd walk along the back of the sofa and then he'd jump up onto a table. Così, così, così. And then he'd run along like this and then he'd jump up on the stairs. Così, così, like this, like this, like this. And then he'd hold it above, like this, to the door and out. And he'd walk back in and the entire crew was standing there like this. And he'd go, vai, 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 subito, subito. And everybody, you know, running around like not knowing what to do. 2 days later, we're ready to shoot this sequence. And they have a cameraman tied on a pole, attached to a dolly. 4 guys go like this, lifting the cameraman up on a harness that he's got, holding the camera into the air. Then they run along with this track that they built way up the side of a room so that it could go over our heads and beat us to the door, and we go out.
En el 94, Argento recibió un reconocimiento a sus logros de por vida en el segundo Festival de Cine Fantástico de Montreal. Vamos ahora a una última pausa y ya regresamos con más En Vidas. Siendo el cineasta italiano Dario Argento en Vidas.
Silenzio! Partito! Silenzio!
He did some really radical stuff, editing-wise, too, that people don't really give him credit for. I mean, you know, from subjective points of view to sudden tight close-ups. This had never been done, and it gave an immediacy to the films that followed them.
When you see John Ford movies, even if you see when it's already begun, you don't know who made this movie, but you see the style, you know, you see the way of doing the shot, you know, it's very personal. And with Dario is the same. It's a very personal way of filmmaking, and I like it.
Oh, my friend, yeah.
Argento hoy es reconocido en todo el mundo. Para muchos admiradores el nombre Argento se ha vuelto casi una marca.
Well, he's pretty famous in Italy with young people, with kids. He and I were over there at the Turin Film Festival, and we went out to an Egyptian museum to look at mummies, I guess reliving our old Hammer horror film days, and he was mobbed by school kids, mobbed. They knew who he was, and they were yelling and screaming for him. So he's very popular with the young generation because there's no one else doing what he did anymore. That whole, his whole genre is kind of gone from him.
When you go to Japan, my father is famous like in Italy almost. it's beautiful to see that he reached people all over the world. He always say that he tells a story, and it's great to see that the story he tells is interesting for everybody in the world.
I'm very proud of the success of Dario, because when I met him, I really loved his cinema. I really loved his imagination, his capability of great technical skill, you know. So this remains. I can't cancel this, and this he deserves the success he has all around the world.
Ma tutti I medici che ci sono, ma proprio lui.
Io sono orgoglioso, ma orgoglioso di niente. Sono contento di aver fatto tanti film, alcuni ne sono stati scritti, è stato scritto tanto, quindi vuol dire che qualcosa hanno significato. A me interessava narrare, raccontare, era come un'esigenza profonda che sentivo, quella di raccontare. Ho avuto la fortuna di poter raccontare sempre.
Dario's always had his always just really, I don't know, followed his gut on, well, this works and it works for me, and therefore I hope it works for you, and I don't care if it doesn't, which is a terrific attribute that he has. I mean, he just sort of lays it out there. I mean, he cooks a stew, and you don't like the way it tastes, tough.
I had finished the film. I was at the hotel packing my bag. Knock on the door. Scusi, Dario wants you. He forgot one shot. What shot? Non lo so. Come. I'm sitting in the car, we're driving, further than we've ever driven to any location. I'm thinking, I don't remember any of this, where are we going? And it's getting dark, and we're driving. The next thing is, the guy points at this big door. It's almost like a castle. So I get out of the car, and he drives away. And I'm standing there in the pitch black. I'm thinking, what's going on here? So I go over and I bang on the door, and I swear to you, a guy with a lantern answers the door, and he goes, and he walks off. I was in pitch black, you know, and so I had to keep up behind him, turning all these corners. And I'm thinking, I am living a Dario Argento movie here, and I'm getting nervous, and I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on here. Maybe they're gonna kill me. Then I turn up, and all of a sudden, there's a big shout, and fountains light up, and a whole band begins to play, an orchestra. And it was a farewell party. That was the location Dario chose to have the party. It was a fantastic time.
Érase una vez Europa es una serie para televisión que se encuentra en proceso de postproducción y se centra en el cine europeo de los 50 a los 70. Más de 60 personalidades han sido entrevistadas y allí, por supuesto, está Argento. Será hasta la próxima en Vidas.